The rain had just started to fall when the street froze in a moment no one would ever forget. Engines idled, chrome gleamed under gray clouds, and a small figure stood shaking in the middle of the road, her shoes soaked, her breath uneven, her eyes carrying a fear far too heavy for a child. In that instant, before anyone understood what was happening, something invisible cracked open in the air, the kind of moment where ordinary lives quietly turn into unforgettable stories. What began as a routine afternoon would soon become a memory etched into the hearts of an entire neighborhood. Before the story unfolds any further, pause for just a moment. If you believe that kindness still exists in this world, that strangers can become miracles, and that second chances matter, please take a second to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps stories like this reach more hearts that need them. The little girl had been running for blocks before she reached the street where the bikers were gathered. Her lungs burned and her legs trembled, but fear pushed her forward harder than exhaustion ever could. Behind her, in a small apartment above a closed grocery store, her mother lay on the floor, barely conscious, her breathing shallow and uneven. The girl did not understand medical terms or emergencies. She only understood that her mother would not wake up, and that time was slipping through her fingers like sand. The bikers had gathered for reasons no one else on the street knew or cared about. To outsiders, they looked intimidating, a wall of leather jackets, heavy boots, scarred knuckles, and roaring machines. Their bikes lined the curb like restless beasts, engines still warm, helmets resting on handlebars. Some pedestrians crossed the street to avoid them. Others glanced quickly and looked away. The neighborhood had long learned to judge before understanding. When the girl reached them, she didn't slow down. She stumbled forward, nearly falling, her small hands clenched tight, her face streaked with rain and tears. She dropped to her knees in front of the group, not caring about the puddles soaking her clothes, not caring about the stares, not caring about fear anymore. She only knew one thing: if these people didn't help her, no one would. The street went quiet, conversations stopped, engines were turned off one by one. Even the rain seemed to soften, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The bikers looked down at her, surprised, confused, unsure of what they were seeing. This wasn't part of their day. This wasn't expected. And yet, there she was, fragile and desperate, asking the universe for mercy in the only way she knew how. The leader of the group, a broad-shouldered man with silver streaks in his beard and eyes hardened by decades of life, felt something shift inside his chest. He had buried friends. He had survived things that still woke him at night. He had learned to build walls around his heart. But the sight of that child cracked those walls wide open. He didn't think about reputation, or appearances, or the past. He only thought of his own daughter, grown now, and how small she once was when she needed him most. Within seconds, the group moved with a coordination that came from years of riding together, protecting each other, surviving together. One of them lifted the girl gently, wrapping her in a jacket to shield her from the cold rain. Another was already calling emergency services, his voice steady, precise, refusing to let panic take control. Two more mounted their bikes, ready to clear a path if needed. What had looked like chaos moments earlier became purpose. They followed the girl back through the streets, engines roaring again. But now with urgency instead of noise. Cars pulled over instinctively. Pedestrians stepped aside, watching with wide eyes as the unexpected procession moved through the neighborhood. No one knew exactly what was happening, but everyone felt it was important. Something serious. Something human. When they reached the apartment, the smell of damp walls and old paint filled the narrow stairwell. The bikers didn't hesitate. They climbed the stairs two at a time, boots thudding against concrete, hearts pounding with a rhythm louder than their engines. Inside, they found the woman exactly as the girl had left her, pale, barely responsive, her body weak against the unforgiving floor. Training didn't matter in that moment. Titles didn't matter. What mattered was action. One biker knelt beside the woman, checking her breathing, keeping her airway clear. Another grabbed blankets. Another stood by the door, watching the girl, making sure she wasn't alone, making sure she didn't feel abandoned again. They worked together silently, driven by something deeper than words. When the ambulance arrived, its siren cutting through the rain-soaked air, the bikers guided the paramedics inside with urgency and precision. They stepped back when told, respecting the professionals, but never leaving. The little girl clutched the sleeve of the man who had first lifted her from the street, her small fingers gripping leather like it was the only solid thing left in the world. Neighbors had gathered by then, whispering, watching, trying to understand what they were seeing. The same bikers they avoided, the same men they crossed the street to escape, were now standing soaked in rain, faces tense with concern, refusing to leave until they knew the woman would live. Judgment dissolved into silence. Silence turned into respect. The ambulance doors finally closed, and the vehicle pulled away, lights flashing against wet pavement. The girl stood still, trembling, her eyes locked on the disappearing vehicle. The street felt empty again, but something had changed. The man knelt in front of her, lowering himself so he wasn't towering anymore, offering her a gentle presence instead of words. He placed his helmet on the ground and stayed there, waiting, letting her breathe. They didn't leave her alone. One biker contacted a nearby community center. Another spoke with a neighbor who offered dry clothes. Another bought warm food from a corner shop that had just reopened. They surrounded the girl with quiet care, not asking for thanks, not seeking attention, simply doing what felt right. Hours passed. Rain stopped. Night settled over the street. Finally, word came from the hospital. The woman was alive, weak, but stable. Treatment had arrived in time. Time that had been bought by small legs running through rain and by a group of strangers who chose compassion over indifference. The girl didn't cry then. She smiled, small and tired, the kind of smile that carries relief so deep it feels unreal. She leaned against the biker who had stayed closest, her head resting against his arm, trusting him without question. In that moment, the street understood something powerful. Heroes don't always look the way stories say they should. In the days that followed, the story spread. Social media posts appeared. Neighbors talked. People who had once avoided the bikers now waved at them. Children smiled when the motorcycles passed. The girl's mother recovered slowly, learning what had happened through tears and disbelief. She asked to meet the men who had saved her life and her child's future. When they visited her in the hospital, they stood awkwardly at first, uncomfortable with gratitude, unused to praise. The woman held her daughter close, her voice breaking as she thanked them. The bikers listened quietly, eyes lowered, hearts full. They didn't see themselves as heroes. They saw themselves as people who did what anyone should do when a child asks for help. Before this story comes to its final moments, please take a second to comment below with the word hope, if you believe that humanity still shows up when it matters most. Your comments help keep stories like this alive and visible. Weeks later, the street looked the same, but it felt different. The rain came and went. Engines still roared. Life continued. But something invisible remained, a reminder that kindness can appear in unexpected forms, that fear can be replaced by courage, and that even the smallest voice can move the strongest hearts. And now, near the end of this story, if this moment touched your heart, if it reminded you that goodness exists even where people least expect it, please like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement helps spread these true feelings of hope and humanity to others who may be losing faith. The little girl would grow up remembering the day strangers became her shield. The bikers would ride on, carrying a quiet pride they never spoke of. And the street would always remember the moment it learned not to judge by appearances but by actions. In a world often loud with cruelty, that single afternoon whispered a truth that still echoes today. Sometimes, salvation arrives on roaring engines, guided by hearts that never forgot how to care.